This chapter is taken from class 7 science. Let's get begin. What do you observe in this picture? Observe it very carefully. It's a sleeping dog, right? Can you see this upward and downward movement? Why do you see this upward and downward movement? If you observe this dog very carefully, you will able to make out that there is a regular upward and downward movement of its body. This indicates that this animal is breathing in and breathing out, isn't it? There are various number of organs involved in this process. This makes up a new system called respiratory system. So in this lesson, we are going to learn more about this respiration process and the respiratory system. So let's begin. Let's see what are we going to learn in this lesson. At the end of the chapter, you will able to understand what is respiration. So we are going to understand the respiration process in detail. We are going to also understand the types of respiration, that is aerobic and anaerobic respiration. We are also going to learn about respiration in human being. We are going to learn about respiration process in some other organism, including plant. Why do we respire? That's a very, very important question, right? All the living organisms do respiration process. But why do you think so? We require energy and therefore we do respiration process. But what's the connection between the respiration process and the energy? For that, at the end of the lesson, you will able to understand the meaning of word respiration. Food that we eat store energy or rather contain energy. We have learned about different food groups or different components of food in our lower classes. The different components of food are carbohydrates, fats, vitamins, minerals and proteins. Out of these, carbohydrates and fats are called energy giving food. Irrespective of whatever food we eat, we get energy from the food. When we respire, food is broken down in the cell of our body. With the help of oxygen and energy is released. This process is termed as respiration. So simply, respiration is nothing but breakdown of food. Now, in order to break down the food, you need some cutting tools or breaking tool, isn't it? Just like if you want to cut an apple, you require a knife without which you won't be able to cut an apple, right? Similarly, to break down food, oxygen is essential. So with the help of oxygen, food will be broken down and energy will be released. So this process is termed as respiration. So we are going to understand this process more in detail. Now, the process of breakdown of food in the cell of an organism to release energy is termed as cellular respiration. Let us see what is this cellular respiration in detail. Human body is made up of various organ systems. For example, digestive system, respiratory system, okay, we have excretory system, circulatory system, skeletal system. Now each of these organ system is further made up of sub-part called organs. For example, we have learned about nutrition process and wherein we have learned about the digestive system. It comprises of various organs like esophagus, stomach, large intestine, small intestine and so on. So these are further organ system is made up of further subdivision called organ. Each of this organ is made up of still smaller unit called tissue. And each of this tissue is still further made up of something called cell. The cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. To understand this in better, let me give you an analogy. House is made up of various rooms, isn't it? Each of these rooms are made up of walls, and each of these walls is made up of smaller part called bricks or building block. So just like a block is the basic part without which we cannot construct wall. If there are no walls means no rooms, and if there are no rooms means no house. Similarly, cell is the basic structural and functional unit of life. Each and every part of our body is made up of these smaller parts called cells. So this breakdown of food take place inside the cell to release energy, and this process is referred to as cellular respiration. Okay, so here food basically refer to glucose. What we know that carbohydrate and fats gives us energy, so they are called energy giving food. So here when we are talking about, when we are referring to breakdown of food, we are referring to breakdown of glucose with help of oxygen to release energy is termed as respiration. So all living things require, or in order to survive, they have to undergo the process called respiration. They have to respire. We require energy to do various kind of work. Right now I am explaining to you the lesson. I also need energy. Okay, so energy is very essential to do each and every kind of activity. So the respiration process helps us in getting the energy. Now this respiration process, as I already told you, breakdown of food using oxygen, right? For that, the oxygen has to enter in the body. So who help in doing that? So we know that breathing mechanism help us to intake oxygen within the body. So this movement of air in and out of the body is known as breathing. So what is breathing? Movement of air in and out of the body is we called as breathing. Now, for example, many organisms have various breathing organs. We human beings inhale air with the help of nose or nostril. Okay. Organisms such as earthworms breathe in air through their skin, whereas fish uses gills as their breathing organ. Or plant, you have stomata or the tiny pores which are present on inner side of the leaves, which help in exchange of gases. For the respiration process to take place, breathing is essential. So breathing help in exchange of gases. That is, oxygen is taken within the body and carbon dioxide is given out of the body. So this exchange of gases will take place only when we breathe. So breathing is very important part of respiration process. So this respiration process in human being can be categorized into three main stages, or actually just two main stages. External respiration, which is also termed as breathing, and internal respiration. Okay, now this internal respiration is also called as cellular respiration. Let's understand the process in detail. What do you mean by the term external respiration? As I have already told you, external respiration is what? It is also called as breathing. So the process of taking in air and giving out air is termed as breathing. So which gas do we breathe in? Most of the organisms take in oxygen. and give out carbon dioxide gas. So the oxygen is utilized to break glucose, okay, to break down glucose. And that process of breakdown of glucose is termed as respiration. So what is the purpose of external respiration? External respiration or breathing help us in exchange of gases, without which the main respiration process won't be taking place. Now, internal respiration is also termed as what? Cellular respiration. Why do we call it as cellular respiration? As I already told you, since the respiration takes place within each and every cell of our body, since our entire body is made up of millions and millions of cells, and within each of these smaller unit called cells, respiration takes place, and therefore such respiration process is termed as internal respiration or cellular respiration, in which the food molecule will be broken down with the help of oxygen to release carbon dioxide and water. Now this internal respiration process or the cellular respiration process take place by two ways. Let us understand both the ways in detail. So depending on whether we use oxygen or whether we don't use oxygen, the respiration can be grouped into two main categories. Over here we have first category and second category. Okay, so glucose, if we break glucose with using oxygen, we term it as aerobic. Here aero means air. Here when we are referring to air, we are talking about oxygen. So the respiration process in which oxygen is used to break down glucose is termed as aerobic respiration. What do you mean by the term anaerobic? Just opposite of that. The respiration process that takes place without using oxygen or in absence of oxygen will be termed as anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration takes place mostly in organisms like human beings and other animals. Now, what are the end product of aerobic respiration? During aerobic respiration, when glucose is break down, we get three subproducts: carbon dioxide, water, and energy. End product of anaerobic respiration is alcohol, carbon dioxide, and energy. Here, alcohol is the different product that you get as a part of anaerobic respiration. Okay, so actually respiration processes are just of two main types. What are the two main types? Aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic means in presence of oxygen, anaerobic means in absence of oxygen. Now, sometimes our muscle cells, okay, muscle cells, they undergo anaerobic respiration, that is in absence of oxygen, and during that time lactic acid and energy is released. Now why do muscle cells undergo anaerobic respiration? It is during the time when we are doing heavy exercise, okay, rigorous exercise. During heavy exercise or rigorous exercise or doing some heavy activity, the demand for energy in the body is more, whereas the glucose breaking down using oxygen is taking place at a much slower rate. Therefore, the muscle cells will start breaking down this glucose without using oxygen, that is in absence of oxygen. And when muscle cell break glucose in absence of oxygen, lactic acid is produced along with energy. This lactic acid, if it get accumulated in the muscles, we get muscle cramp, isn't it? Therefore, when we are doing heavy exercise or rigorous exercise, you must have experienced muscle cramp within the body, isn't it? And why do we get a muscle cramp? Now you know the reason. The reason for muscle cramp is due to accumulation of lactic acid. How to get rid of this? You can increase the blood supply on the affected area. Wherever you are getting muscle cramp, you can increase the blood circulation. How you can increase the blood circulation? By massaging at that affected area. So either hot or cold massage will help you to get relief from this muscle cramp, or you can just simply massage the affected area with oil. By doing so, what are you exactly doing? You are increasing the blood circulation at that level. More the blood means more the oxygen. More the oxygen means now the cells will undergo aerobic respiration. That means lactic acid will not be produced during that process. Okay, so now understood two main types of respiration, aerobic and anaerobic. So here is the summary of both the processes. As I have told you, aerobic means what? Presence of oxygen, glucose will be broken down to get carbon dioxide, water and energy. Anaerobic in absence of oxygen, the respiration process that takes place in absence of oxygen, and you get alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. Aerobic respiration releases large amount of energy, whereas anaerobic respiration gives you less amount of energy. The end product of aerobic respiration is what? Carbon dioxide, water, energy. Whereas the end product of anaerobic respiration is alcohol, carbon dioxide and energy. Aerobic respiration occurs in higher organisms like human being, cat, dog, cow and many other animals. Where this anaerobic respiration takes place in microscopic organisms like yeast and some bacteria, that is anaerobic bacteria. Okay, and we also know that anaerobic respiration takes place within our body. It's only when there is a lack of oxygen, it's when we are doing rigorous exercise. Okay, as I have already told you about muscle cramp. So how do we get a muscle cramp? Muscle cramps are caused due to accumulation of lactic acid. What causes muscle cramp in our body? You may get question for exam. It is due to accumulation of lactic acid within the body causes this muscle cramp. And how this lactic acid is produced in the body? As a end product of an aerobic respiration. As an end product of anaerobic respiration, the lactic acid and energy is released. So when this lactic acid get accumulated within the body, you get muscle cramps. So I have told you about anaerobic organism, right? These are the picture of yeast cells which undergo the process of anaerobic respiration. What is anaerobic? Absence of oxygen. Now, let's understand the breathing process in detail. What is breathing? As I already told you, breathing is nothing but process of taking in air and giving out air is termed as breathing. Now that's a very simple definition. Let us now see what exactly, which gas do we breathe in? We take in oxygen rich air and we give out carbon dioxide rich air. So the process of breathing, that is taking in oxygen rich air and giving out carbon dioxide rich air is termed as breathing. Okay, so in one breath, what is one breath? One breath is nothing but taking in air and giving out air. The process of taking in oxygen rich air is termed as inhalation. What do we call it? Inhalation. Whereas the process of giving out carbon dioxide rich air is termed as exhalation. So one breath includes inhalation plus exhalation. So what is one breath? One breath is inhalation plus exhalation. So the number of times that a person breathes in a minute is termed as breathing rate. You can do this activity, you can pause the video and you can do this activity right now. You are going to find out how many times do we breathe, or how many times we breathe in a minute. One breath I told you, one inhalation plus exhalation. You can keep a timer for 1 minute and you can do it. On an average An adult human being inhale and exhale 15 to 18 times per minute. Okay, that's the average breathing rate. This get reduced or decreased when we sleep. So when we are sleeping, this breathing rate decreases. Why it decreases? Because the demand for energy is less when we sleep. We hardly require energy to do any kind of activity. So the breathing rate get reduced. Whereas it increases when we are doing some heavy exercise or some heavy work. Okay, that's the reason our breathing rates become faster. Therefore, you must have experience when you do or when you come out of the PE period. Once you finish your PE period, you will experience that your breathing rate increases, and that is because the demand for energy within the body is increases. Yes, and therefore the breathing rate also increases. Okay, so the breathing rate is generally 15 to 18 times. It may reduce when we are not doing heavy exercise, that is when we are sleeping, and it increases when we are doing heavy exercise. Now we are going to understand the different parts that are associated with the human respiratory system. So we are going to learn about human respiratory system in detail. Okay, so human respiratory system consists of nostril or nose, which is also called nasal cavity. Then the trachea, which is also called a windpipe. Trachea ends in bronchi or bronchus. We have two bronchi here, which further ends in further part called bronchioles. Both this bronchi and bronchioles lie within a big sac-like structure called lungs, and below the lungs we have diaphragm. So these are the six main parts of human respiratory system. Let us understand each of these in detail. So parts of human respiratory system, as I told you, are nasal cavity, trachea, windpipe, lungs, diaphragm, and bronchi or bronchioles. Let us see the first part, that is the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is also known as nose or nostril. What are this nose or nostril? These are nothing but tiny opening, okay, through which we inhale air and we exhale air. Now if you notice your nose or nostril carefully, the inner lining of the nose or nostril, you will find tiny heads are there, and it also lined with one sticky substance called mucus. Now both these tiny hair and mucus act as filter. How do it act as filter? When we inhale air which comprises of large dust particle, this tiny hair and mucus blocks this dust particle entering into the human respiratory system. So these here the first entry point, the air is getting filtered and then it pass on to the next part of the respiratory system, that is the windpipe. So these two parts are very important, tiny hairs and mucus. Then this mucus also help in moistening the air. What do you mean by the moistening the air? Air that we inhale is very dry air. Okay, so moisten means the mucus, since it is a liquid kind of substance, so it help in making the air moist or watery, which will be very helpful for the easy absorption into the alveoli. Okay, these are the main function of this hair, tiny hairs and mucus which are present within the nasal cavity. So what's the importance of nasal cavity? For inhalation and exhalation. Okay, for inhalation and exhalation, that is taking in air and giving out air. Now let us see what is pharynx. Pharynx is actually a common passage for both food and air. Okay, so that's a common passage here. Can you see this part? Okay, that part is called a pharynx. This At the end of the pharynx, you will find a structure called epiglottis, a flap-like structure, a lid-like structure which opens and closes the mouth of windpipe and food pipe. So when it opens, the mouth of the windpipe is open, so the air will goes or move into the windpipe. When it closes, the food will enter into the food pipe, that is into the esophagus. So the epiglottis regulates the airflow into the trachea and it keeps the food from blocking the airway. That's the reason we are not supposed to talk when we are having our food. Why? What is the reason now? That is because when we talk, we inhale air. You should also know that the nose or the nostril is not only the entry point for the inhalation or exhalation. We also breathe in through our mouth. So when we open our mouth to talk, we inhale air. So now the body doesn't know whether the air has to go into the windpipe or the food has to go into the food pipe. So the epiglottis opens and sometimes the food, instead of entering into the food pipe or the esophagus, it might enter here into the windpipe or the trachea. Therefore, you are not supposed to talk. Now let us see the trachea in detail. What is trachea? It is nothing but a windpipe. Okay, this trachea or windpipe is 12 centimeter long tube that lies in front of esophagus. Okay, this windpipe lies very close to the esophagus and it extends downward, and the trachea ends up in two branch-like structure called bronchi. We will also see this bronchi in detail slightly later on. Okay, so what is trachea? It's nothing but a windpipe and it's 12 centimeter long. What is the function of trachea? To pass the air further into the bronchi, which will then take the air into the lungs. Okay, now this inner side of this trachea or the inner wall of this trachea is lined with mucus and cilia. What's the importance of this mucus and cilia? So this mucus and cilia lining help the trachea in further purification of the air. We already know that the air that we breathe in, if it is having any dust particle, it will get stuck at the nose or a nostril region because of the mucus and the hair that are present in the nose or the nostril. Further, if this air is contain any germs, okay, that will get blocked with the help of this cilia, that is hair-like structure. Cilia is nothing but hair-like structure and the mucus. So this mucus and cilia, they are going to block these microbes if they are present within the air that we inhale. Okay, very important function of the mucus and cilia. Now, the air that we breathe, I had already told you, they are going to move through this trachea, and this trachea at the end it get branched into these two parts called bronchi. What are they called? Bronchi. Okay, so how many bronchi we have? So we have two bronchi. Singular, we are going to call it as bronchus. What's the singular? It is bronchus. Okay, now each of these bronchi, it's joined to a big bag-like structure called lungs. Okay, so how many lungs we have? We have got 2 lungs. Okay, so each bronchi connects trachea to a large air sac called lungs. Okay, so since these 2 bronchi are there, so at the end of this bronchi there will be 2 bag-like structure called the lung. So we have the left lung and the right lung. Okay, so what is lungs? Lungs are main organs for respiration. They are the bag or the main organ where actual exchange of gases will take place. Okay, they are big, spongy, elastic organs that are located in the thoracic cavity and they are protected by the rib cage. We have learned about the skeletal system in our low classes, remember. There we have learned the rib cage help in protection of many vital organs, and one of the vital organs which are present at the thoracic cavity is nothing but lungs. So rib cage help in protection of these lungs. To the left, so How many lungs we have? We have two lungs. So each of these bronchi ends up in two big bag-like structure called lungs. The left lung is have two lobes. How many lobes are there for the left lung? Two lobes, and it is slightly smaller in size than the right lung. Whereas the right lung have got three lobes. Okay. What's the function of the lungs? Okay, since I told it's a bag, like, so what's the function of the bag? It's to hold or to carry or to put stuff, isn't it? So this bronchi which is there end up in this smaller part called bronchioles for the branching. Okay, and at the end of each bronchioles you have this air bag, like tiny air pockets or air sacs. These are called alveoli. Okay, these alveoli help in exchange of gases. So each bronchi now start branching to produce smaller tubes. Okay, these smaller tubes are called what I have told you? They are called bronchioles. Okay, bronchioles. And each of these bronchioles will end up with a tiny air pockets like this. Tiny airbag or air sac, they are called alveoli. What are they called? Alveoli. This alveoli is lined with capillaries. Capillaries, they are the blood vessels. So here the exchange of gases will take place. So the oxygen rich air will diffuse inside the blood. It will go into the blood, whereas the carbon dioxide rich air from the blood will now going to enter into the alveoli. So you can say alveoli can temporarily go down where the exchange of goods take place. So the exchange of goods in the sense oxygen and carbon dioxide. So when we inhale air, we take in oxygen rich air. So the oxygen is rich air is passed on to from the alveoli into the blood capillary. Then the blood is going to further transport it to the each different parts of the body. Whereas carbon dioxide rich air is now going to go out from the lungs when we exhale air out. We exhale carbon dioxide rich air. That's the function, and that's how the respiratory system works. Okay, that's an animation showing you when you inhale air. So the air moves from the trachea. Now the trachea further branch into the bronchi here. So each of these bronchi further end up in a structure called lung, and bronchi end up in a smaller branch called bronchioles, and there you have this alveoli or the air sac. Here the exchange of gases will take place. So when we breathe in and breathe out, so that's how the gases are exchanged within the body. Okay, so that's the function of the alveoli. As I already told you, what are alveoli? They are like a grape branch. Okay, just like a grape branch of grapes you have, and a grapes you have at the end of this. So similarly, you have alveoli. These are air sacs. So what is the function of this air sac? So these air sacs help in exchange of gases. Okay. Now, what is diaphragm? So, diaphragm, at the end of the lungs, you will see a thin membrane, a dome-shaped structure on which the lungs rest. And this dome-shaped structure, a thin membrane-like structure, okay, this thin membrane-like structure is termed as diaphragm. Diaphragm separates the chest cavity from the lower abdominal cavity. During breathing in and breathing out, the contraction and expansion of the diaphragm take place. And why do it contract? Because diaphragm is very elastic membrane, okay, soft elastic membrane which can easily expand and contract. Okay, so let's see and understand the breathing mechanism now. How do we breathe? How do we breathe? So as I already told you, what is breathing? Inhalation and exhalation is termed as breathing. So when we breathe in air, what happens? You can do this activity right now with me. What you can do? You can keep your hand on your chest and see. When we breathe in, what happens to the chest? Yes, the chest size increases in size. Now when we breathe out, what happens? When we breathe out, the chest size get reduced. Okay, it get decreases in size. Okay, so breathing in and breathing out. So during breathing in, chest size increases, and breathing out, the chest size decreases. Okay, so let us now understand this breathing mechanism in more detail. So during inhalation, what happened? The chest, during inhalation, chest size increases. What happened? Chest size increases. Why chest size increases? Because it gets filled with air. What happens to the diaphragm? See, the diaphragm, since the chest size increases, diaphragm will move downward. What happened to the diaphragm? Move downward. Okay. This is when during inhalation. During exhalation, it is just opposite. What happened during exhalation? Chest size decreases. Okay, what happens during exhalation? During exhalation, it is just opposite, as I told you, the chest size decreases. So why it decreases? Because air moves out of the lungs. Okay, so what happens to the diaphragm? Diaphragm moves upward, or diaphragm goes back to its original place. Imagine if diaphragm was not elastic, what would have happened to the diaphragm? Yes, it would have got rupture or break, isn't it? When the chest size increase, it would have got break or rupture, but it's not happening. That is because diaphragm is very soft and it is elastic structure. Okay, look at the animation carefully. See, when we inhale, what happens to the chest? Chest size increases. What is happening to the diaphragm? Diaphragm is moving downward. During exhalation, that is when we exhale air out, chest size decreases and diaphragm moves back to its original place. That's the breathing mechanism. Okay, so that's inhalation and exhalation process in detail. With the help of this animation, you can clearly make out the inhalation and exhalation process. So during inhalation, the chest size increases, diaphragm moves downward. During exhalation, the chest size decreases and diaphragm move upward. It is just the opposite process. Same thing I have put up over here. So during inhalation, when we are breathing in, chest cavity increases in size, diaphragm move downward and air enters into the lungs. During exhalation, what happens? When we are breathing out, the chest cavity reduces in size, diaphragm move up and air pushes out of the lung. That's the breathing mechanism. Okay, with that we have almost finished with the breathing mechanism in human being. Okay, let us see the percentage of air that we breathe in. So the air that we inhale contains 21% of oxygen and it contains 0.03% of carbon dioxide gas. It doesn't mean that when we are talking about inhalation doesn't mean that taking in air only containing oxygen. As we know, air is a mixture of various gases. So when we breathe in mixture all the gases. But the percentage of oxygen when we inhale air is much more than we exhale air. The exhaled air contains just 16% of oxygen, which is very less compared to the inhaled air, whereas it contains 4% of carbon dioxide gas, which is more what in which we inhale. During inhalation, the amount of carbon dioxide is less. Therefore, we say we breathe in oxygen-rich air and we give out carbon dioxide-rich air. And this is a summary of inhalation and exhalation process that is put up over here in this table. As I already told you, during inhalation what happened? Diaphragm contract and it flattens. That is, it moves downward, isn't it? What happens to the chest cavity? It increases in size because the volume of the chest increases, because we inhale the air, it expands, air flows into the lungs. During exhalation, diaphragm relaxes, become dome shape again. Okay, go back to its original shape, that is move upward. The volume of the chest decreases, lungs get contract and air is moved out of the lungs. Okay. What is the importance of this respiratory system? As I already told you, this respiratory system help in exchange of gases. Exchange of gases, that is taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide, without which the respiration process will not take place. What is respiration? That is breakdown of food. Breakdown of food will not take place without this exchange of gases. So respiratory system is very very important. It has got two main functions: exchange of gases and breakdown of food. This is the related to human respiratory system. Let us now understand the respiratory system in other animal. The basic process of respiration is similar in all the organisms. Okay, whether you talk about plant or whether you talk about animal, the basic process remains the same. Okay, both in plant and animal. That is, first there will be exchange of gases, and with the help of this exchange gases, the breakdown of food will take place to release energy. Okay, there are some organisms we are going to learn, but the respiratory system may slightly differ. So we are going to understand the respiratory system in these animals, in some insect. So we will start with cockroach. Okay, that's a picture of cockroach. So what happens in cockroach? Inside a cockroach, you will find this system something like this. Okay, and there is an opening through which the air is taken in within the body of a cockroach, that's called spiracle. This spiracle end up in a tracheal tube, like this long tube, that's called a tracheal trunk or the tracheal tube. Just like we have a trachea, that is a windpipe. So there is a tracheal tube-like structure which help in movement of this oxygen throughout the body. Okay, so the cockroach has, as I have told you, have the small opening on the side, both the sides, and these opening, what are these opening called? Spiracle. So the oxygen rich air will enter through these spiracles. Spiracles are connected to a network of tubes called trachea or tracheal tube. So with the help of this tracheal tube, exchange of gases will take place, or the oxygen rich air is supplied throughout the body throughout the body of a cockroach with the help of this tracheal tube. And that's how the further respiration process take place inside the body of an cockroach. Okay, let's now see some other organism, earthworm. Okay, respiration in earthworm. As we know, earthworm respire through their skin. How do they take in air? With the help of the skin. That's the reason if you have touched the body of an earthworm, you will find the body is moist and slimy. Okay, the body of the earthworm is moist, slimy, or that is slippery to touch. Very watery kind of thing. And why? Now you know the reason why. That is because the exchange of gases take place through the skin. They don't have nose or the nostril for the exchange of gases. So how do they exchange the gases or breathe in and breathe out? With the help of their skin. And therefore the skin is moist and slimy or slippery to touch. Okay. Now let's see how do the fish or the other aquatic organism breathe in. Okay. Fish, as we know, it is an aquatic organism. What's the meaning of aquatic organism? Okay. What is aquatic organism? Aquatic means those organisms living in water. So fish breathe in with the help of a specialized organ called gills. So these gills, as you can see in this picture, are nothing but they are lined with blood vessels. These blood vessels help in exchange of gases. So the most aquatic animals such as fish breathe in with the help of these gills which help in exchange of gases. Okay, so fish will breathe in air and breathe out air. So oxygen they are going to take it with the help of this gill. You must have seen this aquatic animal. The breathing rate in these aquatic organism is much faster. And why it is much faster? There is a reason. The percentage of oxygen which is present in the dissolved form in water is much less. Okay, it is much less compared to the percentage of oxygen that is present on the land. Okay, and that is on the in the air. Okay, the percentage amount of oxygen present in the air is much higher compared to the amount of oxygen present in the water. Therefore, the breathing rate is much faster. They need to breathe very fastly so that they can break the food very quickly in order to meet their energy requirement. Okay. Let us now see the respiration process in plants. How do plants do respiration process? Have you seen nose or the nostrils of plant? Definitely no, right? But there are openings present on this plant as well. And where are these openings present? On the leaf. So on the inner side of the leaf, on the lower side of the leaf, you will find some tiny openings. Okay, these tiny openings which are present on the inner side of the leaf, they are called stomata. These stomata help in exchange of gases. What are stomata? Nothing but, as I told you, these are like this tiny openings, okay, which are surrounded by these guard cells. Now these guard cells open and closes, okay. So when it expand and contract, like we can see in this animation over here, so this guard cell swells and contracts, okay. When it swells open up, the during that time the oxygen is going to move out of the plant, whereas carbon dioxide gas is going to enter into the plant. Unlike animals, which gas is essential for the plant taking carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. Carbon dioxide gas helps plant in a process called photosynthesis. We have learned about it in our chapter 1. That is, carbon dioxide gas is very essential for the plant to prepare the food. That is, this process is known as photosynthesis. And at the end of the photosynthesis process, oxygen gas is released. This oxygen gas is not essential for the plant, so therefore the plant is going to give out this oxygen. And the stomata help in doing this exchange of gases in plants. Okay, so plant also respire with the help of their roots. We know that what's the function of the roots? Roots help in absorption. What help? Root help in absorption of water. Okay, some root also help in taking in oxygen from the air spaces which are present in the soil through the process called diffusion. Okay, so this tiny root which are there in the plant, they will take in oxygen and give out carbon dioxide to the process called diffusion. And such type of exchange of gases take place mostly in the younger root and not in the older roots. So the roots, what they will take? They will take in oxygen. Okay, very very important. They don't take carbon dioxide, they take in oxygen. And okay, so they will going to take oxygen and they are going to give out carbon dioxide. Okay, if roots cannot respire, they cannot produce energy necessary to actively take part. Okay, so what happens if the root doesn't take in oxygen? What will happen? They will not be able to break down the glucose. If they don't break down the glucose, they won't be able to get the energy. Okay, therefore what do these roots do? In order to meet their nutritional requirement, they take in oxygen for this breakdown of glucose to get the energy. Why they require energy? To carry out the process. What is the or to carry out the function? What is the function of the root? Absorption of water and mineral. That's the reason plant roots also help in respiration process. With that, we have finished with the entire lesson. What have we learned in the entire lesson? We have learned about process called respiration. What we have learned? Respiration. Then we have seen the types of Respiration. There are two types of main types of respiration, or two stages of respiration. Okay, in external and internal. External respiration is called breathing. Internal is called cellular respiration, which are of two types: aerobic and aerobic respiration. Okay, aerobic and aerobic respiration. Then we have seen the breathing mechanism. What's the breathing mechanism in human being? Before that, we have seen the human respiratory system. We have learned about human respiratory system, the organs involved in the breathing process, okay, their structure and their function. And finally, we have ended the chapter with respiration process in other organism. In other organism, which organisms we have seen? We have seen earthworm, cockroach, fish and plant. I hope you have understood the entire lesson. If you like my video, you, you can give the thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more such informative video. Thank you so much.